and welcome. I'm honored to be hosting and moderating this panel. This is such an excellent set of speakers that we have today. And let me jump right in, right? And we'll start with a small icebreaker session so that the audience has an opportunity to understand the background and the experience of our, panelists. So Anand, I will start with you. And as we can see from your Zoom background, you're now at Vedanta. But that hides the fact that you have been around in the manufacturing space for more than 20 years and working with technology companies such as Honeywell, General Electric, Siemens, and even technology service providers such as Wipro. And it's a great pleasure to have you here. But why don't you talk to us a little bit about the transitions that you have made in your professional journey and the experiences that you have put together from there, and how it's maybe helping you at Vedanta?
Hey, thank you, Sidhant. And first of all, a very warm welcome, greetings. Pleasure to be here. Little bit about my journey. I think it's been a bit more than 2 decades now. I started my career with Siemens. I would say that's where I think I got my exposure to working in the field. So really have sort of gone around commissioning SCADA, DCS, process control equipment across cement plants, captive power plants, and some of the large ports in India. From a digital transformation perspective, whenever I speak at a forum like this, I say that, we've moved sensor data over wireless, way back in the late 90s. And with the enterprise and the corporate team having visibility to what's happening in the field. Today we call this IoT and IIoT. So I think the digital journey really began there. Then, of course, spent time working with General Electric and Honeywell. I think concepts like digitization, looking at automation and everything, concepts like Six Sigma, Lean, the whole agile way of working. I think something that was very, very embedded in whatever we did at Honeywell and GE. And then, of course, I've had some stint in the oil and gas consulting world. When I used to work with Wipro, I've largely worked with large national and integrated oil companies, partnering with them on digital transformation programs, understanding enterprise architectures, the landscape and digital solutions that get deployed and how problems are solved at the intersection of some of the digital technologies that we have today. Of course, at Vedanta, for some of you who may or may not know, our interest is largely both. It's natural resources, mining and metals. I think we have interest in almost every metal. And then, of course, on the oil and gas side, we are the largest independent private operator in the country. We produce close to 27% of India's crude oil. The digital transformation journey at Vedanta, I think we've come a reasonable way. The last 3.5 years, I think we've been solving problems, addressing business opportunities at the intersection of various digital technologies. And I'll talk a little bit about as we go along. So that's about me, Sidhant.
Perfect, Anand. Thank you so much. Andreas, I will move to you now. And I think with you, we have a true blue mechanical engineer from Germany. Basically, you spent your lifetime in Sweden working for core companies such as ABB, which was then acquired by Alstom and now Siemens. And more importantly, you have been contributing to the industry, not just in terms of technology, but also in terms of worker reforms, etc. And one of the most interesting facets that we discussed some time back is, you were doing additive manufacturing even before people started talking about it, more than 15 years back. So what has been, your experience, your journey through these multiple, almost more than 2 decades of work and a lot of work on the new age manufacturing techniques?
Thank you, Sidhant. It's a pleasure to be here. Well, I would say additive manufacturing is fun. but it comes also with pain. I need to say that we have not gone through a success story, but a story of failure and success. So when you are familiar with this Gartner hype curve, you start with hype. It's working. You are very confident that everything works as planned. You print out in metal what you want. But then when you want to redo the same thing a second time, a third time, and many times, you start to realize that it is not easy at all. And you feel a pain. You go down into this valley of tears. And I remember very vividly in 2015, our management called us into the office and said, well, guys, you need to change many things. We are not doing as well as we want. Invent something so that we get successes. And so we decided to introduce digitalization into additive manufacturing. And so from the hype, we went then into this valley of tears, and now we are on a curve that is, I would say, more realistic. And that's thanks to digitalization. And that's my biggest takeaway from this. It's hard.
Right, perfect. Thank you, Andreas. And we'll discuss some of the challenges that you just alluded to as we move forward. Dilip, I will come to you. You're now at Honeywell, but again, you spent almost a lifetime, about 2 decades in Bosch, and before that in Siemens. You've led their Industry 4.0 practices, and now, and more than that, you have led engineering teams across different global locations, and now you're in Netherlands. Do you want to share your experience and some of the biggest learnings that you had over these multiple years in different roles, and how do you want to benefit from that?
Yeah, thank you very much for asking the question, and pleasure being here with this eminent panelist. Thank you for inviting me. Definitely, from the learning point of view, let me talk about very few, because it's a long journey and a lot of learnings I have. But few learning, like one, I would definitely say has created a lot of my leadership characteristics is when I played the role of global engineering, because I was managing the teams across the globe, people in Netherlands, people in Sweden, people in USA, people in Malaysia, in India. And it gave me a different kind of perspective in terms of how people come across with respect to different cultural background, with respect to different perspective. And I have learned to leverage that diversity and diversified people together and create the stronger collaboration. And I see a great connect here, because I'm responsible for Honeywell Connected Industrial product portfolio. And the team is truly global. It's not that we are in India. We have a team. I have a team in Australia, in US, in Canada. And definitely this experience of leading global team has immensely benefiting me to really shaping the team and driving the team forward with a very clear purpose. The second learning, which is definitely very important, is my stint in product management, because I spent nearly 3.5 years. I kind of jumped from engineering to product management. But I feel it created a lot of value for me as a leader, because one side, as an engineer, we are builder. We are building a building, but the consumer sees in a completely different way. And unless you go to their shoes, and unless you really touch them in terms of understanding what really they feel, you will not really grow in terms of a product leader. You need to have that sense of how consumers see what you build, because they don't see you are building an engineering marvel. They see a product which creates value for them. And the third learning, definitely, which is creating a lot of value for me at this point of time, my last stint in Bosch, where I was responsible for digital manufacturing and improving the digital transformation across the plants as a manufacturing innovation head. That stint, I could go into the shop floor and meet the people who are really using the digital technologies. And that opened up so many misconceptions in terms of when, as a software engineer, we build a product, but the people who are in a shop floor, they are not software engineers. They are not so highly skilled people. They need product which is easy to understand, quick to learn, and apply and create the value in a moment, not like I need to configure so many values and parameters and then only I can use. And that learning in the shop floor, and not only about their expectation, also their challenges they face in the shop floor, in the line, that is really creating a lot of value. And I see that I'm able to connect the dots which I have learned over the years in taking care of this particular responsibility, where I am truly focused on building the product which is going to be something which creates value for industrial customers. What we are strongly focusing on UX to ensuring that the products are mature in that, but not only that, but creating a holistic performance, as we say in Honeywell Forge, the enterprise performance management, that means creating a true digital experience for an industrial customer. And that's our focus. And I see all my learnings is coming together and connecting the dots here in this role.
Right. Perfect. Thank you so much, Dilip. That was very comprehensive. And maybe some of the challenges that you alluded to, especially on the shop floor, etc., is what maybe Andreas also was trying to talk about. And we'll definitely discuss that more. Harikrishnan, I will move to you now. You have been part of ABB for almost about 2 decades now. And you've built a career around looking at R&D, engineering, especially on the process side. One of the things that comes to mind, and we have audience mainly from the next generation, etc. One of the questions that always is in the mind is, what motivates you to be in that one firm for so long, and what are the top things that you've been learning from there?
Thanks, Sidhant, for the introduction and the question. It's a little bit difficult to answer. And also, greetings to all from my side as well. So I started my career in the automation domain in early 2000s, when Y2K was making the headline for most of the technology areas. So meeting different customers at that point of time in the context of ensuring they will have a seamless transition to the 1st of January 2000. It was really an eye-opener to see the criticality and importance of automation systems that is bringing to the life of manufacturing. As an organization, I always found 2 things at the core of ABB. One was customers, other one was innovation. All the years, there have been a consistent commitment demonstrated in investing on R&D, being on the technology leadership, bringing innovation significant to sustainable life on the planet. The second one, customer was always at the nucleus, protecting their investments and also helping them to having a migration path to the latest and greatest technologies without losing their investment. Like Dilip was talking, I also had the opportunity to work and manage with different cultures across the globe and widen my perspectives. But what I want to share is one incident. We had a colleague, when I met him first time in ABB in 2006, he was very close to retirement. He could talk to you for hours, he could engage you in various things, emerging technologies, any part of the automation system you took, he would be able to engage you. He found a way to come to office even after his retirement in his 70s as a consultant and play with the ABB systems. And while doing that, he will call the development teams just distributed across the world and also the top leaders of the industry in any part of the day or in midnight, talking about his concerns, his suggestions, and also his feedbacks about the system. And I was really amazed to see everyone used to listen to him and also giving due respect to his opinions. Once he invited me and one of his my friends to his home, and he was offering a beer. I was really amazed to see the way he has built a batch system for blending beer and other beverages using different automation systems. It was really amazing. So just coming to your question, the biggest motivator was the passion for technology and also having great people around to work with and getting inspired from.
Excellent. I think you have solved the puzzle in terms of retention. It is great role models and beer. Uh, Thank you so much, Hari, and we will come back to your rich experience and have some good questions for you. So, Harit, I will come to you now. You have a very interesting title in terms of head of innovation at McDermott, based out of Netherlands. You had again multiple stints at different companies, including core companies like Halliburton, EPCs like L&T, different areas that you have been a part of. And in most of these areas, you have held the responsibility of innovation. So, Harit, what is it, or do you want to share one very interesting innovation or a memorable idea that has seen the light of day that you are very proud of, or you would really like to talk about?
Thank you, Susan. Thank you, all the panelists. It's if I need to choose one, that will be very difficult to choose one. But I would like to give a little bit background and a perspective, because I always been for the last 22 years, 23 years, I'm always been in oil and gas, and in oil and gas also in a different domain we call as a upstream, midstream, and a downstream. So downstream is where petrochemical refinery, and all the plants that we build. On upstream, that means everything below the ground is what we need to take the crude out of the reservoir and bring it on the floor. So that's something is different and challenging. So when I was back in Halliburton at the time, we all know that very sad incident happened called Macando in Gulf of Mexico. So at the time there was a lot of challenges for us to make sure that whatever drilling and whatever operation that we perform is going to be completely safe, because oil and gas industry in general is not that popular or not that remarkable in terms of the safety, and that's why safety is always the priority for us in oil and gas. Recently, you also know that when a cyclone hit on India, so there was in Bombay High, there were a couple of people who were at the platform and they were stuck because they were not able to come out of it. So with reference to that, I can tell you that one of the challenge which we are right now working to come up with a solution, which is the completely unmanned offshore facility. When we say unmanned, that means we wanted to have minimum physical presence during operation of offshore facility, so that at least we can produce and run the facility. We will have the human deployment only at the time of maintenance and not throughout the time, so that at least we will have more safety aspect. So it is very easy to say, I would say, we can come up with a unmanned offshore facility, but there are a lot of challenges, and we certainly wanted to use the digital technology. I, being a mechanical engineer, I've always been to do R&D and innovation and purely in engineering aspect. So digital part is part of my overall role. But when we look at implementing or changing the way we work, the way we build the offshore facility, we wanted to utilize all the latest technology that will fit for people. We never wanted to create something that will be troublesome for people. Rather than the technology should be useful and beneficial for human. And so that's the ultimate aspiration that we have. And as I mentioned to you, that one of the biggest challenge which we currently working on it is to come up with less human interface and a more technological driven the operation and the maintenance of offshore facility. So with this, I will hand it over to you, and we will have more question answer during the discussion going forward.
Perfect.
Thank you.
That was actually pretty poignant that you referred to, some of the key incidents, especially in oil and gas. And I think it'll be really interesting. I think that the perspective that you gave in terms of unmanned oil rigs, I think that's almost, I'm sure, as complex as unmanned fighter aircraft. So we'll develop on that a little more as we move ahead. Ashish, I would love to bring you in right now. And you've been in the industrial space for more than 2 decades. You have worked across multiple customers and clients, and you have a very interesting vantage point to have seen this industry from different areas, right? From EPCs to actual tech firms to software companies, etc. So I'm just curious, to understand what are the 1 or 2 areas that you're really looking forward to exploring or implementing within the space.
Thanks, Sidhant, and hello everyone. Delighted to be a part of such a elite co-panelist with me. So very interesting question, Sidhant, right? My journey has been, I've been a part of the product organizations like Robert Bosch, right? I've been developing ERPs for manufacturing industry. One of them was in Bangalore, who were part of manufacturing the big walls which are required in dams. And then I was writing a software for, generating the BOM, configuring the product, and how we can generate the automated BOM in way back in year 2000 and so on and so forth, right? So very interesting question. There is a great curiosity of how IoT 4.0 can bring immediate to medium to long-term benefits. And while organizations are thinking about it, there is a disruption happening with 5G, right? So your question about the curiosity. So I am curious about 2 areas. One is technical and second is non-technical. Some of the non-technical aspects, some of our panelists have, already hinted upon. So on the technical side, with the 5G, I'm more curious to explore and learn about the various use cases which can enable and accelerate implementation of some of the complex use cases with low latency and high bandwidth availability, how it can help workers, how it can help manage the productivity, how it can help manage the quality. So that is important aspect which I would be, interested in. Of course, I mean, HARMAN has launched recently a 5G test lab for devices testing, and we are trying to build some of those use cases. On the non-technical side, right? I mean, in last 2 years, remote working was happening, and now it will turn into a hybrid workplace. So it will not be going to be as normal as it was before pandemic hit us, right? So it can be operation from anywhere, and it will be going to be a hybrid workplace, right? Not everybody will be at the same place all the time. So how the collaboration would happen, right? Then there is an urgent need for organizations to look at their models which can remove the barriers and enables the innovation, right? And some of our panelists have alluded towards that. Third important aspect is data orchestration is a need to empower the data driven decisions, right? So how data orchestration can happen across the organization. And then finally, develop a resilient supply chain and transport strategy. Again, it is addressing current cost pressures, etc. So these are, some of the technical and non-tech areas which would I would be more interested how the industry is going to evolve around some of these aspects. Sidhant, back to you.
Right. Thank you so much, Ashish. So I will now move into the next section that we have, which is more in terms of us, specific areas and trying to understand from the experiences and anecdotes from each of our panelists. And Andreas, maybe I will start with you. And you've been, associated with core industrial manufacturing firms, and you've also been at the forefront of, looking at innovation, new technologies, etc. And one of the things that we have consistently noticed is the fact that COVID has brought forward many of these digital use cases across industrial and manufacturing firms. At the same time, what do you believe are the new age technologies that are already happening, that are already, creating a large impact on operations, or will in the near future create a significant impact?
Well, working with additive manufacturing, it would be a crime not to mention additive manufacturing. I believe that additive manufacturing has a potential of helping manufacturers to establish robust supply chains. We see that very well, that today we focus on traditional workshops with 3D printers inside. I can very well imagine that in the near future that we will have portable, mobile production units in containers, for instance, where you can then, in an agile fashion, distribute your manufacturing resources as you need. COVID has shown that very much. When there are no transports possible through the Suez Canal, you want to be able to produce where you need the goods. I believe that additive manufacturing is such a candidate for disruptive technology because, and that's maybe the most important characteristics, because it is data-driven. You can extract so much data from the printers. I remember when I was welding engineer, I had a voltmeter and an ampere meter and a stopwatch. That were 3 channels I had to measure. Now with a printer, I have 30, 40, 50. I don't even remember how many channels I need to record.
Interesting.
That's the new oil, the data for the future. Understanding what you are doing and learning from it.
Nice. Interesting that you mentioned that. And I'm sure as we move forward, we will have a lot of, interest and questions around data and how to keep it secure, how to make sense of it, how to leverage it for the best use cases, etc. Dilip, I would like to come to your comments on almost the same questions, right? Which are the top technologies and how do you see them impacting the manufacturing processes?
Okay. I think it depends a little bit on the maturity of the organization, because some of the organization may be in a very early stage of digital journey, and for them the needs are quite different. But how I see the digital technology is that there are certain technologies which are kind of a hygiene. If you really want to drive digital transformation, you need to have ability to collect the data from the machines, because without the data, you cannot drive most of your solutions. So the connectivity becomes the hygiene factor of your digital journey. Your ability to store the data in a data lake becomes kind of a hygiene factor, or creating and bringing together all the information these are certain hygiene factor where you have to establish your data governance, your data security, your data management, all these processes. But the value creation starts when you are started applying real sense on those data using AI and ML algorithms. And that the reason I say that I strongly find that AI ML has the strongest potential in manufacturing organization, because the manufacturing organizations are data rich. The amount of data it produces, it's enormous. And the most important part is this data has a very high value. When I see the data, it is the past data, runtime data, and using those both the data, how do I predict the future? And in a manufacturing organization, the amount of data it produces, some of the example I could say in a range of 100 of GB in a day, that is something, if you mine, you can really bring the performance of the organization in a completely different scale, which is nearly impossible to think in the past when we were trying to do that data manipulation using Excel sheets and notes from different people.
Interesting, Dilip. And I think we've been, the common thread we've been discussing is around data and its uses. So I'll maybe come to Anand and, take a specific, question and leverage his experience, especially around these areas, right? So Anand, how do you think data and analytics solutions really help manufacturing companies gain their deep insights? Can you talk about a few use cases, examples from your experience, Anand?
Absolutely, Siddhant, and I tend to agree with both Andreas and Dilip, right? So I think today applying data-driven technique and analytics almost is becoming integral to every process, every activity. I mean, if I look back at our oil and gas business or even our broader Vedanta business, I think we've sort of taken a value chain view, right? I mean, and if I talk about oil and gas, Harit talked about upstream, midstream, downstream. So we are largely an upstream and midstream setup. And if you look at the upstream side of the business, um, it all starts with data. You collect seismic data. Essentially, if you are able to understand the subsurface and where oil is, that's where it all begins, right? So to that extent, I think to this industry, analyzing, understanding, interpreting data, is quite normal, and it's been there always. What has changed is, I think, with the power of cloud, the power of the ability to scale, your compute and have the ability to run simulations, understand the data, interpret the data. In fact, we talked about machine learning and AI. Dilip said the exploration side of the value chain, a lot of opportunity with data and analytics is augmenting our geoscientists with AI-driven interpretation of the seismic and subsurface data. When you move along the value chain, then once you understood the data, you develop your field, right? I mean, and then you try to drill wells. Again, as you do that, you generate a lot of data. Now, you've got the ability again to understand what's happening in real time in the drilling process, and then be able to predict what's likely to happen and have the ability to control it. We have applied, take a very specific example. In our industry, we have this concept called hydraulic fracturing. We essentially, in layman language, you sort of push a fluid to sort of sweep the oil, right? So you essentially, if you have the ability to understand using the operating parameters of the previous job, if you're able to, so what we did was we actually built a machine learning model based on a lot of previous jobs to prevent an anomalous situation. Now, how did we do it? So obviously, it's like a typical, supervised machine learning exercise, if you like. You had a number of jobs, you had a number of data from those jobs. Then using that, we've been able to train a model to be able to predict a potential failure, or at least, help cluster if there is a problem or there's an opportunity or a possibility of a failure, right? So I think field development, drilling, fracturing, again, very good opportunity in terms of applying this. Production, I think, when the wells are producing and you monitor the wells, you generate again tons and tons of data. Clearly, biggest opportunity for us, I think, in our industry, maintaining the uptime of the equipment and having the ability to understand the reservoir using data-driven techniques is a big deal. In fact, we're starting to apply some of this. And I would also point out, I think, particularly in industrial environment and manufacturing environment, today, data-driven techniques are not used in isolation. I think we need to understand the physics. It could be thermodynamics. It could be, all sorts of physics that you need to combine with the data-driven techniques to be able to model any of the process that you're talking about. Again, big opportunities. I think the biggest value pocket is in the production, asset optimization, process optimization area. And then, of course, we've got the enabling function areas like health and safety, human resources, finance. Clearly, I mean, with SAP and ERPs, the data that we've got, huge opportunity to apply analytics, apply machine learning, and drive optimization and efficiency. Today, at least from our perspective, we are at a juncture where we've got the data lake and the data pipeline set up. The opportunity now is to sort of create almost like citizen data scientists. I mean, every business user having the ability to use that information and build those predictive models themselves. That's the sort of thing that we are looking at, and we're starting to make happen.
Interesting, Anand. And thank you for sharing very specific examples. I'm sure it has been very valuable for the audience, and at least for me, understanding those use cases has been really useful. Hari, I would like to direct this same question to you in terms of, how have you seen, or what are the examples that you have seen or implemented from a data and analytics use case perspective?
Yeah, just to build upon from where Anand left, I think we have seen different levels of automation in the last few decades. And what we are seeing in recent times is also technologies that turn automation to autonomous. So you'll have autonomous operations, autonomous engineering, autonomous maintenance. You take anything you do in a manufacturing, you should be able to make it autonomous. Last few years, you have also seen the convergence between IT and OT happening. But in the recent past, you also see one more layer coming in between, which I would say engineering technologies, where process and design data also works in harmony with OT and IT. The foundation of what we talked all here, I mean, data and industrial analytics, is all about contextualized data, because the real value exponentially increases when one contextually integrates operational, engineering, and information data together. So we, like Anand was telling, we could not do this in isolation. So coming to the questions about some of the things, it's also on different levels of maturity in different industries and also in different geographies. We have seen, simple digitalization where the data, once it's available in a digital system, many of customers use it for comparing similar assets like a pump or motor or a drive, working in different parts of the plant, looking at their efficiencies, how they are working, etc. On the other hand side, it can go to a very, very high abstraction level where we can compare, for example, a data center in Singapore and a data center, say, in Houston, hosted by the same cloud company, whether they are having the same performance, same conditions, etc. So it's all scaling up using like building blocks and making sure it works. Coming to very specific things, we have also seen on the operation sides, there are solutions that help customers or user to avoid cognitive load and then focus on the relevant data. One study was talking about there are 70 to 80% of the data very seldom used in plant, and it's very difficult to identify the remaining 20%, which is very essential to identify the anomaly. So you can compare basically the steady state conditions and conditions during an anomaly and use that data for doing, say, what is the real root cause, and then say the prescriptive actions that we could do. So this is some of the things that could be very interesting for on the operator side. The other most important things which people are using is also on the predictive maintenance, where, for example, for a motor, you use the design information and runtime information and see that this could run for so many hours and it could fail. And these are very much available in many of the organizations across. The other very interesting thing was also on quality inspection and preventive maintenance we have seen. One of the very interesting, the quality inspection or preventive maintenance comes in areas where you are very difficult to access or on hazardous conditions. One of the very interesting case was the insulating oil inside a transformer, where we could do the visual inspection and without having any direct contact, you could predictively maintain, or you could see the condition of the insulating oil and see when it should be changed. So such quality inspection, such preventive maintenance, that's also gaining a lot of momentum. But having said all that, I mean, I do agree that this is no more something which is reserved for somebody who is very knowledgeable. We should be able to abstract the complexity, and I think many of the digital manufacturing is coming into place irrespective of the industries.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Hari. You've shared multiple examples, and each of them were really insightful. Harit, I would like to come to you now. And we've spoken about data. We've spoken about some of the use cases. But along with data, also almost like the other side of the coin comes security. We also need to think about cloud and how do you take data there through connectivity. And these are all important pillars when it comes to manufacturing and digital manufacturing. So, Harit, in your experience, how have you seen companies invest in some of these other pillars as well, and some examples that you would love to share on those sides?
So thanks for asking this question, Sidhant. So if may I allow, I'll try to combine the data and the cloud in two aspects. So when I'll try to answer the data, I'll also try to answer a couple of questions that posed by Mr. Mayank and Mr. Malini, that how those data are useful. So I'll 100% echo what Anand said, that data is not only to create different graphs, but data is to make our physics model more stronger. So when we create any kind of numerical analysis, we all engineers, we over the years we had been doing numerical analysis, but we forget that even the simplest Bernoulli equation is based on certain assumption. So once at that time, they have done the equation because they had limited data. Now we have more data, so we can refine that equation. So if that data is going to useful to refine that equation, then those data are useful. Otherwise, other data are not useful at this moment. I will not say useless, but not useful at this moment. Similarly, for oil and gas, as I mentioned to you, in upstream or even in midstream, when we work in upstream, we work very remotely. Everything that we drill, probably 2,000 feet below the ground, that something is way away from the facility. Similarly, when we build the downstream facility, refinery or LNG plant, that also will be away from the local area. So the cloud is very essential for us. Why? Because we are going to capture all the data, we are going to store it on a cloud, and this cloud technology really helps us to manage our project in a more efficient way nowadays. Because previously it was all piece of paper, files. It was not very cumbersome process to do it. Now through data, anybody can access anytime. I could also connect the data in a cloud together. For an example, when we build LNG plant or a refinery plant, which is probably a few kilometers away from where our offices are. So the person who is working at the plant, they can easily connect through our experts who is sitting somewhere in other part of the world. And through the cloud application, we can share the information so that the answer to the query that was raised from the site can be resolved quickly. So that is how the mix of data and the cloud application is definitely going to helpful. Although you mentioned about manufacturing technology, but I keep giving more example on a construction technology, because our role is more on not just limited to mass manufacturing, but also extend it to the offsite construction. So data and a cloud application definitely go hands in hands. Data, I'll repeat, if they are going to be useful for human, then definitely those data are very important. Otherwise, those data are only sit as a data. So that's it from me, Sidhant.
Thank you, Harit. That was very interesting to see that you're actually trying to redefine certain core equations as well. So maybe we'll chat upon that separately too. Ashish, a similar question to you, and I would love to have your comments because of your experience with different companies, right? And how have you seen investments by different companies across the value chain? Any specific ones you would like to talk about or comment on, Ashish, please?
So again, Harit has spoke about it, right? Harikrishnan has spoke about it. So I mean, many companies are thinking about achieving digital at scale. and it can give manufacturing the resilience and flexibility it will need to speed its recovery after COVID crisis and beyond that also. So, if I was referring to one of the surveys from industrial, analyst firm. I have seen that, before COVID, say 50% of industrial executive responded positively to digital transformation. That number has gone up to say 83%, right? So seems to be urgency in terms of addressing some of the issues, and I think digital transformation is going to be that particular aspect. Now you talked about data, connectivity, cloud, and security, right? These are all key elements, and I don't. In my conversations with customer, I don't think one is different from other, right? There is no priority in terms of only I will invest in say connectivity. There could be priority in terms of say first I need to connect unless machine speaks, there is no data. Unless there is data, though, there is no need of cloud, because obviously cloud gives you the ability to do the computing faster, right? That's why IIoT and IoT is coming into play. Earlier it was machine to machine, right? There were connected machines and etc. in the past, but that was not very fast. So cloud is also required. Now, with all the invent of the cloud and opening up of the systems, then there is a probability of different vulnerable attacks which are happening on the system, right? So security becomes again a very key important aspect. So in my mind, organizations have to think moving beyond. Obviously every executives will have their own priorities, but figuring it out just one area to say that we will invest only in this and other three areas are not important, I think that's not going to give them the desired result, right? So in my mind, organizations are investing in all of them equally.
Okay, perfect, Ashish. Thank you so much. Now, what I would like to do is just focus a little on just oil and gas, and I would want Anand and Harit to come in on that. Maybe start with Anand. So Anand, we spoke about a few interesting use cases, especially in oil and gas and automation. Harit spoke about unmanned oil rigs. You spoke about you were alluding to, I guess, fracking in terms of hydraulic flushing, etc., and how they have contributed to real advancement in the oil and gas space. Going forward as well, what are the areas or what are the use cases, technologies, especially around using automation, connectivity, that you believe will drive further automation, increased efficiency within the oil and gas space?
So Sidhant, I think I'll probably say that not only in oil and gas but industrial manufacturing. I think when it comes to advancement in automation, today the industries have seen advanced process control, for example, right? I think over the last 2-3 decades, I would say whether it is oil and gas, upstream, downstream, or any of the industrial manufacturing, automation and advanced process control have been applied. But I think it's probably being taken to the next level because now we have the ability to understand historical process behavior, right? It's almost combining nonlinear optimization with advanced process control with machine learning and artificial intelligence. So really, I think that's the biggest advancement in terms of saying, can we augment? And so if advanced process control was giving set points to the process to optimize it, but over a period, there is a machine learning model or an AI model that's learning from historical process behaviors and then further optimizing it, right? So that's really, I think, the future, if you ask me, from advancement in automation and then applying digital technologies. As we speak, I think we are starting to apply some of that, not so much in a very autonomous way. To give you an example, let's say a lab sample that would take 6 hours or 8 hours to come out. Today, we have the ability to build a soft sensor using a machine learning model to get that quality parameter maybe every minute or once in an hour, right? Without having to ship the sample to the lab and get the results. Obviously, how are we able to do it? Because we've got previous historical data based with the model has been built. So I think we're starting to augment process optimization and control with machine learning and analytics. But I think a few years down the line, and maybe a year down the line, I think we probably see a lot more autonomous operations. I think that's where it's going to get interesting and very useful for organizations like us, because I mean, this year, I just want to give an example that maybe in the last 2-3 years, we've always talked about creation of value with digital. But I think as we speak this year, in the business plan, we've got a certain number of barrels of oil per day that the digital team has taken as a target that would come from digital, which is probably not the case. And as I see years ahead, I think digital and automation is going to contribute to a lot more production optimization opportunities and value creation.
Great, interesting. Thank you so much, Anand, for being very specific and also giving some ROI examples as well. Harit, coming to you, what would be your take on the same question, Harit?
So similarly, as I say, data and the use of data is absolutely critical for oil and gas industry. As I mentioned to you, and probably some part is repetitive, because we need to work in a remote area, in a remote space, whether it's upstream or downstream. So that way, the use of data, coming up with more smarter way to working, making sure that all the humans are safe, making sure that we don't lose the efficiency but also gain the productivity, making sure that we eventually end up providing a sustainable solution. In every aspect, we need different types of data. And the more data we have, the more stronger decision we will make, and a more accurate decision we will make, and that will help us as well as overall industry and as well as overall society. So in simple terms, probably it's a repeat answer, but data for the use of human is absolutely essential for oil and gas.
Thank you so much, Harit. That is very interesting. And I would like to just broaden this conversation now and, maybe get, Dilip and then Andreas. So Dilip, we've spoken about maybe specifically around oil and gas, but, if you look at the factory floor, if you look at some of the other applications in the usual industrial scenario, what are some of the key applications and use cases that you believe will deliver significant ROI in the near future? And we've heard of so many different things, right? We alluded to real-time tracking, we've heard about digital twins, but can you just break it down for us and make it easier to say that, hey, these could be the top ones that would give us real ROI?
Okay, I think this is something looks like my boss is asking. So ROI
have practice answering this, so.
ROI definitely is something every manufacturing head is always looking for, and I think the answer lies in the context of where you are applying. So, if you're a manufacturing organization in a low-cost country, your focus should be more in terms of how do you generate revenue out of optimizing the processes and assets. So the use cases like asset maintenance or optimizing process or creating autonomous line, like Anand mentioned a little bit about creating the autonomous operation, those are definitely creates a much higher ROI because you are in a low-cost location. But in a high-cost location, your shift may be completely changed because you have to focus on optimizing people performances, people cost, and that time the use of robots, use of the automated processes becomes much more effective, like remote maintenance and remote operation. So it always depends on context, but generally the industry, what my observation so far in the different studies is that asset and operations has been really a core focus for most of the organization in last few years, because these are the two is definitely creates a lot of value, and the ROI is calculated in a very short time. Because if you can really optimize your line performance by 2%, you are immediately gaining the 2% on your product. Or if you are able to reduce the cost of maintenance on an asset, the ROI is very quick to come within a year's of time. So from point of view of finance calculation, the finance guys always love the use cases which is around operations and assets.
Perfect, Dilip. Thank you so much. So, Andreas, maybe the same question to you. What are some of the top areas you are seeing on the factory floor from an ROI perspective?
Well, that's a very good question. I would say we come as Siemens Energy from a history as a traditional manufacturer of gas turbines, and at that time we had standalone data systems. And now we want to bring together all these different data sources. So we need to create this data lake, this PLM, this product lifecycle management lake. And that is difficult. That is very, very expensive. And I believe that we do not have the good answer, because this answer is different for every different company. We struggle with this. We invest a lot. There's no way around. You need to make your data structured and accessible. If you achieve this, then a new world of analysis opens. So that's, I would say, at the core of all your investments. You need to have structured data that you can analyze. And one odd thing that I can think of, maybe unexpected. So if you are a global operations, like Siemens Energy is, you want to export data. And you need to make sure that you are allowed to export this data because of all the export control. And I believe that there is a high risk that you underestimate this. That would be my second thought on this. Make sure that you know where the data comes from, which legislation it belongs to, and to where you can export it.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much, Andreas. And one of the key things that we have spoken about interesting use cases. We have spoken about how multiple companies are doing different things from an ROI perspective. But if I come to some of the key challenges in terms of implementing these, one of the key things that we hear is about mainly around the people, process, etc. But more importantly, in terms of talent. So how do you really, I mean, it's not very easy, especially for, companies working on core to hire, talent on this part, make them understand domain. So there's an aspect of hiring right, up-leveling them, training, etc. So maybe I'll just come to Harit very quickly right now. Harit, if you can add your thoughts around this space and maybe around some of the other challenges and how you're really able to attract, manage these teams, up-level them, etc. That will be wonderful, Harit.
Thank you, Sidhant, sorry. Yes, managing talent is very critical in this digital technology because, especially in oil and gas industry, we have well-experienced candidate as well as, young generation. Young generation are very smart. They use all the digital tools and technology, whereas the experienced candidate, I would not say they don't use it, but they have little resistance. We need to train them. Even using simple example, using Microsoft Teams or using Zoom, before pandemic, people were struggling. Whereas now everybody at least had to learn how to do the, conference call, etc., because everybody is working remote. So that way, retaining the talent, making sure that we keep upgrading them and also encouraging them that some new technology is not to hinder their performance, but to help them. Because every time we need to emphasize them again and again on a different tools or technology that we implement. As I think Dilip mentioned, that you develop a nice software, but when it comes to the user, if they don't like it, or they feel that, okay, I'm going to spend more time using this software, they will not use it. So that's the biggest challenge whenever I create any MVP. But when it's time for implementation, we pay a lot of attention on usability and making sure that the senior member also, because young generation, with due respect to their skills and ability, they can quickly learn. But the senior member, they would probably tend to do it in the way they had been doing it for last 20, 30 years. So it's I would say, in terms of people, process, tools, and technology, I think people are the most challenging thing to implement the tools and technology. So it's something we need to seriously pay attention about it.
Perfect.
So thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Harit. And also, Harit, I understand that you have some exigency for which you might not be able to join us for the Q&A. So thank you very much for your thoughts, and really appreciate your time spent with us, and also the insights that you provided to the audience. Thank you, Harit.
Everybody.
Dilip, I would love to get your perspective on this question, right? Especially with you managing so many different centers across the globe and engineers from different areas. So what would be your take on this challenge, Dilip?
I think skilling with the speed our technologies are changing. Upskilling is no more a kind of a intervention. It's a regular activity. And I always, it is not today. I think I started this journey 15 years back when I focused on a continuous learning process for myself. And as a leader, I try to inculcate similar behavior in my team. I just started recently a continuous learning process for the team, which is focusing on upgrading with the knowledge. So many tools, so many technologies are coming. And I think one of the biggest challenge, which just now Harit was mentioning, that mix of people, because we also have some of the talents who are very experienced, comes with a domain background, PhDs, have done research years over on different advanced process control. And then you are mixing with a fresh talent from IIT who is ready to start and write an ML algorithm. And how do you utilize this 30 years of experience and just came from the industry together to create the next generation of software? And I think Anand has already pointed out one of the biggest benefit this particular industry will get is when this physics merges with the ML algorithm. The speed of innovation and we are seeing our products are evolving so fast. Our products are in the industry from last 20, 30 years. And I don't think in the past it has evolved so fast. But with the current technology, we can evolve our product much faster. And because of that, we need to build the talent pipeline who can handle and manage this for future.
Thank you so much, Dilip. Anand, I would love to get your take as well, maybe on this. And if you want, you could maybe broaden it to not just people, but any of the other challenges that you believe are the key ones in trying to implement some of these key use cases and technologies.
Yeah, sure, Sidhant. I think clearly I agree with what has been said so far. So on people, one of the things that we are doing to address this is, I mean, it's like cross-skilling, right? I mean, if you can't expect a geologist or a reservoir engineer to understand, let's say, support vector machines and machine learning techniques, and at the same time, a data scientist, digital technologist, the moment you talk to them about field, reservoir, wells, compressors, pumps, I mean, it doesn't come naturally to them. So what we've been consciously doing on programs, digital programs, is pairing people, right? So take an opportunity. I mean, give you an example. We have a program within the company called the Young Leaders Program. One of the reservoir engineers came up with an idea to build a machine learning model to predict the flowing bottom hole pressure, right? So in a well. Obviously, this person had the knowledge of the well, of the reservoir. We paired him with a member in the digital team who understood data science, analytics, And then we also brought in a startup partner who brought in the platform and technology and technologists with them. Now, if you look at this three in a box, a domain person who understands the business and the opportunity, the partner within Vedanta who is the digital team, and then a startup partner. That's all. And I think in that 8-week journey, 10-week journey, all three of them learned a little bit of each other's domain. I think it requires a lot more initiatives like this, and over time, I think in a very simple parlance, I think would be creating techno-functional consultants, people who understand parts of the business or breadth of technologies and how to apply them to solve problems. That's on people. On process, I think Dilip started the conversation with that. I think, it's all about how the field, how the end users use the digital solutions that are being delivered, right? So it's all about adoption. It's all about change management. And that's when value will come out of some of these solutions that get deployed. So clearly that's an opportunity. Again, something that we have done is we put the business person in the front. He or she is the product owner. They are the ones who are driving the transformation, enabled and supported by the digital team and the technology partners we have. That has brought about a change because they're then very embedded. I think there was a question in the Q&A panel around explainability of machine learning models. I mean, in the example I gave you, the reservoir team understands the model well because they were part of building it, right? If they are part of building it, the output of the model is very well understood, and the explainability naturally comes in, right? So I think that's what we've been trying to do. I don't think we have all the answers around change management and adoption, but clearly that's something that we are focusing on. And lastly, around technology, I think everything is solvable. The only priority that we straddle is many of our businesses do not have the foundational IT that is required to address digital, right? So how do we not delay digital transformation and how do we parallelize both setting the foundation as well as the digital portfolio is an opportunity and a challenge. And I think we've been reasonably well addressing this in some of the business. So we're starting to understand how to do it. So that's how I would say the opportunities are across Sidhant, the people, process, and technology.
Thank you so much again. Very well articulated as always, Anand. One of the key things that we've had people asking, and is something that most companies are really looking at, investors are looking at, is sustainability. And I would really like to get Andreas and Hari, your take on what are some of the key initiatives that you are seeing being taken within the manufacturing construct, especially to ensure sustainability across the value chain. So Andreas, maybe if you could start, and Hari, if you could add in as well.
Yes, I can only agree that sustainability is a big thing right now and will be ever more so in the future. I would answer this question with decide on how you want to tackle the sustainability question. Our company, Siemens Energy, has decided to go for the science-based target initiative. You divide your life cycle into 3 scopes, and you have to learn your emissions, learn your footprint. And that's the only thing I believe I can say in a general relevance. You need to understand what you are producing as waste, as emissions, as footprint. And if you do that in this structured way, that is a good first step. So science-based target, that's the way for us.
Yeah, maybe I will.
Perfect. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think the sustainability is also one of the important themes ABB is looking at. In fact, it is also in one of the very important strategically placed goals For example, to set targets, how much of revenue should come from energy efficiency, renewable energy. So I would like to look at it in two ways. One, how as a technology provider we can help to bring the sustainability in the products. The second one is how we work with manufacturing value chain to see that there is a step change and helping the customers to ensure sustainability. When it comes to the internal perspective, there is always a conscious effort when it comes to looking at the automation systems, making less energy consumption, less CO2 emission, and better life cycle adoption. I mean, both in terms of hardware and software as well. Also, there are innovations that help to, say, find out the greenhouse gas. For example, the methane sensors was a very recent innovation. Looking at satellites, you can basically look at from where in the planet is the source of methane gas or any other such green gas emissions happening. When it comes to the other part, collaborating with the manufacturing value chain, this is when it wants to make any step change. Our experience is you cannot do again it in isolation. You want to start to look at from where the energy is produced, where it is distributed, and where it is consumed. You need to look at all the systems or all subsystems in the value chain, whether it's electrical, mechanical, or automation. So we have seen also, I mean, working collaboratively, you have made actually low energy green drives, also the redesigned propeller systems, etc. That was helping to reduce a lot of emissions, energy efficiency in collaboration with automation system. End with one example where in the recent news I have seen, I mean, there was actually a zero emission tour ferry that was actually introduced in Niagara Falls, where ABB has made significant contributions.
Interesting. Thank you so much, Hari. So I know we have just over 5 minutes, and I'd like to bring in some of the audience questions as well. And Hari, you spoke about being collaborative, and some of the questions we are also having is how do companies now leverage the ecosystem for this? And I would love to bring in Ashish's thoughts on this, because you've collaborated with multiple companies, and how do you see, Ashish, companies leveraging ecosystem partners, technology services firms, in terms of helping them either implement or scale some of these interesting technology use cases?
So again, very good question, Sidhant. I mean, you spoke about how companies would retain the talent, and some of the panelists talked about the speed and agility required to solve some of those issues, right? Not everything. I mean, typically services providers, they are more or less at the forefront most of the time on the newest technologies, right? And typically when organizations want to solve the issues, obviously they have the core team, but when it comes to scaling up the organization with the newest technologies, they try and collaborate with the trusted partners in their ecosystem. Based on the capabilities, because services organization typically gain through a lot of different use cases implementation they do for various kinds of customer, and they bring in a different perspective, right? For example, if one organization just dealing in oil and gas and another is in manufacturing, but services provider has dealt with both of them, and there is a good possibility of cross-pollination of some of those thoughts and ideas across so that the effective solutions can be built in. So organizations are leveraging the services organizations for talent pool, scalability aspect. And apart from that, now more thirst is on bringing the very specific point of view on specific problem solutions. And organizations have, I mean, services companies have built those capabilities over a period of time. So I would say that, of course, the core companies know their business well, but when it comes to technology and their implementation, I think service providers and partners like HARMAN can bring in real value and can accelerate the journey what organizations are taking, by multi.
Interesting. Thank you so much, Ashish. I think I have time to just squeeze in one question from the audience. We've had a few questions talking about, security, data privacy, hacks, etc. And I think I will allow Anand to start and maybe Dilip to have the final word on this. So Anand, what is we spoke a lot about data and how to use it, but what about security and privacy? How do you see that shaping up, and what are some of the key maybe rules, principles, etc. around security? How do people feel more secure around the data that you're looking at?
Yeah, so no, absolutely, Sidhant. I think clearly, again, a challenge and an opportunity for us. I look at it in two parts. For industrial organizations, there is the enterprise security. More importantly, the critical infrastructure protection, right? I mean, how do we secure our operational technology or a plant technical system? Obviously, the second one, absolutely important. Many of you would have heard about the recent attack on one of the industrial environment. So I think organizations worldwide, globally, are becoming very conscious. There is investment in this area. In fact, on the automation layer security, one initiative to track is called the Open Process Automation Initiative, which was initiated globally, I think 3 years back. That talks about how do you make these systems secure by design. I mean, typically today, if you look at some of the security that gets deployed, it is almost bolt-on over existing solutions and systems. But really, there are standards that are getting developed to say, if you're plugging in a device on the network, how does that device, how do you design that device for it to be secure by design, right? Rather than trying to then put a firewall or a diode or something like that. So I think there are a lot of advancements that are happening in that space. And I think companies, industrial organizations are starting to invest in it. On the enterprise security, if I were to pick one area, Sidhant, it would be, awareness. I think people are the weakest link. I think the more security aware, infosec aware people we have, I think the better it is. But obviously, again, number of technologies. In fact, some of the digital technologies like AI, ML, being applied to, look at potential threats and then avoid them and prevent them, right? So clearly, a lot of investments, opportunities going in there. I think the enterprise security space is much mature. I think organizations have deployed and are in good shape. But I think on the plant side, clearly also more investment, more training, more awareness. That's how I would.
Great. Thank you, Anand. Dilip, what about you? And like I said, you can have the final word on this.
Yeah, I think security, data governance, data security is definitely one of the very key aspects. I'll give it very short because we are just running out of time. So it all about how do you structure the organization in terms of ensuring that your data is secure. And it needs a lot of governance principle. It needs a strong team background. And as a Honeywell, as a software product provider, our focus is more on product security. We have a dedicated team who really looks into the product, the pen test, penetration test to understand, is there any loophole which can be used by the hacker to penetrate. So we are trying to do definitely a lot to ensure, because we are talking about now the future products are mixing the data of IT and OT, and the access to OT layer is very dangerous for the industry, and it needs to be very seriously taken, whoever is going towards the digital journey. And as a building the software products, we are taking care. But if you are in the digital transformation journey, you need to also look into it very, very carefully.
Great. I think this has been a fabulous discussion. Thank you all. Just hang on. We will have a closing note as well. So Natalia, back to you for the closing note. Take it away, please.
Thank you so much, Sidhant, and thank you once again to all the panelists for a very insightful, interesting, and fascinating discussion. If I had to quickly summarize, I mean, a lot of things were mentioned, but I guess the key takeaways from today's discussion would be that the panelists talked about how technologies will definitely play a very important role, how data-driven manufacturing is unlocking great business value. Anand, I think, brought out the concept of creating citizen data-driven scientists, a very interesting concept to process all the data being collected and how combining that with physics will drive optimized models. And then speakers also talked about the various use cases in process optimization, product optimization, predictive and preventative maintenance. And then obviously, as we know, technology is evolving very fast. Clearly, for business to stay relevant and be competitive, people play a very important role in implementing these technologies, and enterprises need to direct their efforts towards upscale and cross-scale talent. Building techno-functional consultants will also be very important. Something else that was brought up is the importance to ensure sustainability both internally and externally as something vital for businesses to survive. And the focus will be, I guess, on building sustainable products for customers. Internally, business will focus on reducing energy consumption, carbon emission, and creating collaborating systems and processes across the manufacturing value chain. And definitely, finally, moving forward, collaboration within the ecosystem will be critical to cross-pollinate ideas and talent. So once again, thank you so much to all the speakers and the audience members for connecting and staying with us for the whole session. And I'm sure that you guys picked a lot of very interesting insights. I think I became an expert after this whole session. So once again, if you have any questions, please, you can reach us at events@zinnov.com. There's all the information, and we'll get back to you as soon as possible because we could only take a few questions in the interest of time today. Some other great news, we will be sharing the video recording for the session after the event with all of the attendees. So once again, thank you all so much, panelists, as well as audience members, for joining. And we hope to see you in future sessions. So thank you once again. Stay safe and take care.